I've been working on my Blitz 41 scenario, which is the computerized version of Fire in the East using the same basic system that I've been using for the earlier scenarios. This scenario is a lot bigger. I've done most of the special rules that are needed, in particular for the opening turns of Barbarossa, according to Fire in the East and Scorched Earth and all that. And as I have been undertaking playtesting, I have really noticed the magnitude of Fire in the East. I hadn't played it in a while, so I'd kind of forgotten about it. And it really brought to mind an issue that is always caused in any war game where movement and combat are divided into different phases, which is a really common thing. And that is, although the attacks are launched in the combat phase, you have to get everything ready to go in the movement phase. And typically, especially in a big game like Fire in the East, that means spending a lot of time poking around with units, deciding where you're going to put your guys, who's going to attack where, trying to figure out what those odds are probably going to be, trying to get the best odds possible in the attack, and that can often mean a lot of flipping through the rules and looking at charts and playing with the calculator and probably scribbling notes and then trying to remember everything, because if you start, for example, in the north end of the front and work your way southward, by the time you get down to the southern end of the front, you might very well have forgotten what you intended to do up at the north end. In my scenarios, of course, the system knows things like combat factors, terrain effects, weather effects, support, supply, all those kinds of things. And so when an attack is made in the combat phase, the system automatically looks at all of those parameters, figures out what the odds are and what the die roll modifications are, and puts that information up and allows you to continue or not as you see fit. So eventually I had the brainstorm that, well, gosh, I ought to leverage all of that stuff that the system knows, put it to use in the movement phase so that I can get everybody in position, plan my attacks, save my intentions, and then execute those attacks in the combat phase as I planned them in the movement phase. Now, I want to emphasize that that's optional. You never have to plan your attacks in advance if you don't want to. Even if you do plan them in advance, you don't have to execute them. If you do execute them, they can be mixed in any sequence with attacks that you didn't plan in advance. So it's entirely optional. It's just supposed to be helpful. It has no impact whatsoever on the mechanics of the game. It doesn't affect combat factors or terrain or anything. It's just simply a way of saving your plans from the movement phase. So you don't have to think about it. You can execute those plans in the combat phase. So this is an example of how that works. I'm not going to do anything too brilliant. I'll try not to take too long when I'm doing it, but it does allow players to be as meticulous as they want to be when trying to get the exact odds that they want to get in a particular attack. So here we are in the axis movement phase of the surprise turn at the beginning of Blitz 41, which is the computerized implementation of Fire in the East. At this point, because it's the movement phase, I can grab some German units and start moving around just like normal. Oop. Forgot to unclick him. And so on. At any point now, I can say, I ought to be thinking about what kind of attacks I want to make when the combat phase rolls around. A good way to start doing that is to use a feature that's been kicking around for a while. If we look up here, we say we want to see enemy defense, and we want to see friendly attack strengths. And we see we put up these little boxes on each hex, on each stack, and the headquarters represents a stack, to show what are the strengths there. So when we're looking at Soviet units, we're seeing defense strengths, and when we're looking at Axis units, we're seeing attack strengths. And those are just raw numbers. That's the same thing as if you started fumbling your way through stacks of counters and just counting up the raw, unmodified values that show on the counter. So at this point, we're not taking into consideration things like supply status, support, weather conditions, terrain, or anything like that. This is just showing the raw factors in the hex so we can get an idea where are the weak points and the strong points in the Soviet lines and where are our best attacking units. So for this example, we'll look around up here. We'll just play with this area here, and we can see, okay, this is a really weak one, and we look along here. We've got some pretty good stuff here. So let's plan out some attacks. And again, I don't have to, but for this demonstration, I'm going to plan out some attacks that will be executed in the combat phase if we still feel like doing it in the combat phase, because maybe we'll have a better idea at that time. So let's get rid of all those little markers. And let's say the first thing we want to do is attack here, and the second thing we want to do is attack here, and the third thing we want to do is attack here, just to ensure that we get this guy surrounded. Now, he's probably going to be surrounded anyway, but this is just an example, right? So I'm going to select this unit, and now the new feature gives us this option, plan attack for combat phase. So give that a click, and we can now see he is designated to be the target of an attack, and we'll just for the heck of it say, yeah, we want guys coming in from these two hexes. So let's initiate some planning. It pops everything up. This looks almost exactly the same as the screen that you see in the combat phase when you're actually making an attack, except we're not really going to make the attack. We can't execute the attack now. We can't resolve it. All we can do is fiddle around to decide how we want to make the attack, and then we'll save all that data and launch it. If we still want to do it, we'll launch it in the combat phase. So we can choose who's going to be involved in the attack. And for example, well gosh, we've got a 7.6 to 1. Maybe we don't need that much. So let's just take out everybody from that 1st Infantry Corps. That drops it to a 4.4 to 1. Notice that this automatically recalculates everything, and over here it keeps track of the recalculations, and that's really just a visual cue that the system is recalculating things as you make your decisions. Well, maybe we want to put the 1st Infantry Division back in. Well, that bumps it up to a 5.6 to 1. Now, if you've seen any of my other stuff, you know that in my system, I've made the modification that when attacks are calculated, it takes that 10th decimal and rolls to see if that will go up or down. So, and the rules is written, of course, that would go down to a 5 to 1. But in my system, there's a 6/10 of a chance that will go up to a 6 to 1. So any way you look at it, that's a pretty good attack, 5.6 to 1 with a +3 die mod on it. So we'll go ahead and accept this. Now, I could put in air power if I wanted to. In the right circumstances, I could put in naval gunfire support. So I could add in both air and naval support for this, but we'll just stick with the ground for now. Also notice that over here, and this is a little bit difficult to see, these checkboxes are because in my slightly modified supply system, whenever a unit attacks, it burns attack supply. And the checkbox is whether or not you want to burn the attack supply. If you don't burn the attack supply, then your attack factors are going to be degraded. They'll be modified accordingly. However, in Fire in the East, and also in my Blitz 41 implementation of Fire in the East, all the units are automatically in supply during the surprise turn, and even if they attack, no supplies will be expended. And since they're in supply, and no supplies are being expended, there's no reason to not be in supply, so it automatically disables those checkboxes. Under normal circumstances, not in the surprise turn, right now you'd be able to check or uncheck those boxes to decide if you want a particular unit to be in supply or out of supply when the attack actually happens. Anyway, so we've got all the data here, and we're happy enough with it. We could continue futzing around with it if we wanted to, but we'll save it. It tells us that it has been saved, and now we will exit out of that. And let's look. We want our second attack to come in up here, I think. And so let's see what happens when we plan that. And we'll say we want this guy to attack. We'll initiate, and we look at that. We've got a 4.6 to 1 with a -1 die mod. Now, I might say, gosh, I could use some more factors up there. And let's bail out of this. Now, when I run my cursor over here, and we can do this at any time, if we look at this, in the first line where it says German 3rd Infantry Corps, 2325X. So 23 is a total attack factors in the hex. 25 is total defense factors in the hex. X means that different units have different movement points. If they all had the same movement point, then that would show up there. After the slash, 330 means 3 divs, 3 non-divs, and no artillery. Zone of control, Y for yes, meaning yes, the zone of control is emanating from this hex. So we can see that information. And what this also tells us is that, gosh, we've got room for a couple of artillery units here. So let's just look down here. Oh, look, a couple of artillery units here. So we'll select here. We'll say none, because I think that's the fastest way to do it. We'll grab 2 artillery units. We'll run them up here. We'll merge all that. And now, when we say, let's plan that attack, coming from this hex, initiate, 5.6 to 1 with a -1. So I think that's good enough for our sample. We could continue playing with it. You know, I could take that weak motorized light flak battalion out of the hex, and I could move a stronger one in, but I'm good for now. So we'll save that. It's been saved. We'll exit out of that. And then the third attack is going to be here. We'll plan this attack with units from here and here. We'll initiate. Now, when we look at this one, slightly different. It's not terribly easy to see, but there is a red exclamation here, and I should probably find a better way of indicating this, but when I hover over it, you can see it puts the red circle up there to the left. Let's see if I can bounce that on and off a little bit. See it flash up there. That's the hex that this unit is already planned to participate in an attack against. And it tells you right down there in that little pop-up, unit and planned attack against hex 3165. So although the unit is already intended to be in the other attack, we can use him in this attack if we want to. But we've got a 6 to 1. See what happens if we drop him out. It goes down to 4.9 to 1. You know, maybe it would be nice to keep him in there, but I think I'm going to leave him in the other attack just for the heck of it. And this is the time during the planning process in the movement phase where I could be shuffling units around to my heart's content and trying to maximize my odds in the best way possible without using any more attack factors that are necessary, because I might want to use them someplace else. And that's really what this planning tool allows you to do, but I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. I'm going to say that this 4.9 to 1 is good enough. I'll save it. We'll back out of it. And I could continue moving units. I can even move units up here that I've planned for the attack. Of course, when the time rolls around to initiate these planned attacks in the combat phase, if the units that are supposed to participate in the attack are no longer where they're supposed to be, well, they won't be able to participate in the attack. Likewise, maybe somebody else has attacked a hex for which I had a planned attack, and the defenders have already vacated that hex, well, we won't be able to execute that attack either. But the system handles all those things behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's say we've done everything that we want to do when really we know there's about 3 hours more worth of work to figure out all the attacks from here all the way down to the end of the line. Well, in the movement phase, it makes us confirm that because really we can't go back. So we're going to say, that's okay, we've done everything that we want to do. We're now in the combat phase, and I could launch an attack any place I wanted to. I could say, I want to come over here and do this attack. That's not pre-planned, but that's okay. I didn't have to plan it. I can do my attacks just like normal. But I'm going to cancel that attack, and instead I'm going to say, show me my planned attacks. And here they are. So the first one is attacking that hex with the red circle. No air support, no naval gunfire support, coming from this hex and this hex. The second one is attacking that hex, coming from here, attacking that hex, coming from here and here. So let's go ahead, and I could delete them if I wanted to. If I said, yeah, forget it, I don't want to do that attack anymore, I could delete it. Or I could just ignore it. At the end of the combat phase, any pre-planned attacks that haven't been executed will be automatically deleted. They won't be held over until the next turn. But we'll go ahead and initiate the first one. Now we're in the combat phase. It brings up that same screen we saw, but we are able to actually resolve the combat now. If we want to, we can see we've got this 5.6 to 1 with a +3. I could put air support on it. I guess I never did bother to put air support into any of the planned attacks. That's entirely possible, and it, of course, will save it, and it'll show it here. Whether or not you do that, you can either change it or put it in if you had none. So I could kick that up by a few factors, and it recalculates and brings us up to a 6. I could take that out, doesn't matter. These guys, I could still put them in the attack, even though they're not planned to be in the attack. But notice the red exclamation, meaning, hey, you can use this guy if you want to, but according to the planning documents, he's supposed to be attacking this other hex up here. So you'll have to decide. You probably don't want him, but you can take him if you do. So you can change all these things. And likewise, were this not the surprise turn, it would mean that the expenditure of attack supply for each unit would be necessary, and therefore we would have these check boxes over here which are now disabled and grayed out, and we would then be able to use those or not. So anyway, let's just go ahead and resolve it. Here we go, the complete documentation of how all the odds were calculated, how everything happened. So it's not just a black box and you don't know why those things happen. It's all there if you want to review it. We don't really care, because the main thing we care about right now is we got a DE. So let's choose units to advance. We can't choose these guys because they didn't participate in the attack, but we can choose the people who did, but we'll leave him out. And we'll have everybody from the 1st Panzer Corps will go ahead and conduct the advance. And there they are. They've just advanced in there. And now we'll go up and take a look at our second planned attack. And again, we can change as much of this as we want to. We could cancel the combat. We can come back around and initiate it again. We could add air power. If we had naval gunfire support available, we could add in naval gunfire support to this. We could take units out. We could say, oh gosh, there's no need to use this guy because we still have a 5 to 1, but I'll leave him in. And we'll go ahead and resolve it. Again, all the diagnostic information, but what we really care about is we got another DE, a good result for us. So let's go here. And yeah, we will advance with everybody except, you know what, I think I will leave one infantry division behind. And you can see he's there, the red circle. We'll leave him behind. Not that it's really necessary, but just to protect that hex, okay? So we'll click here to conduct the advance, and then we will go to the third and final one that we have planned, and that's going to take us in against the Soviet units kind of in the middle of our little miniature pocket. Notice that the German 1st Infantry Division is unable to attack. Why is that? It's because the 1st Infantry Division already took part in that other attack. And as usual, I can make all the changes that I want, but I'll leave it at this. I'll resolve it. We will ignore the diagnostics for now. Look at this. We got a defender retreat. There's no place for the defender to go. And we can try it. We can say, let's go here. And sorry, it was eliminated. Both those units were eliminated. And now who do I want to advance? I'll leave them out. And I will conduct the advance there. And now I can continue because, as I say before, if you have planned attacks, you can execute them in any order you want, before, after, or during non-pre-planned attacks as you see fit. And again, to emphasize, this doesn't change anything in the underlying system in terms of factors. The sequence of play is not changed. This is strictly a feature for players to be able to help keep track of what they have intended to do in the movement phase so that they can actually execute those attacks in the combat phase if they want to do it. Not much use in a simple scenario like my Berbera 40 scenario. It's so small, you don't need it. But Blitz 41, Fire in the East, probably going to be very helpful. So that's about it. Thanks for listening, and I hope to have a whole bunch more on Blitz 41, the computerized Fire in the East, before too long. Thanks.